Are you a literature lover? Are you tired of reading literature that does not resonate with our time? Do you have questions about literature? If so, welcome to the podcast, My Two Cents Worth, with Odilia Wakesho Mwamburi, the platform that discusses literature in relation to our times. I am uniquely Kenyan and relevantly African, hence my focus, African literature. This is a continuation on the series Lest We Forget, a recognition of COVID-19 pandemic poetry in Kenya. Please listen till the end. You will definitely have food for thought. Let us sail in. It is crucial to note that COVID-19 pandemic implored us to think and rethink the many things we took for granted. This episode aims to make us reflect and look at the world around us in order to realize what we used to take for granted. Honestly, if nothing rings the bell, COVID pandemic reminded us that we are social creatures in need of social interaction and human contact. Simple things as hanging out for a coffee with a friend at a cafe. We are also reminded that we are adaptive and life is more flexible than we think. The pandemic has been a time where many people lost jobs and were compelled to find creative ways to pay the bill. Many of us began working from home. Schools turned online with virtual learning. Many physicians started offering telemedicine. This pandemic has been a testament to just how resilient we are as humans and our ability to be flexible and creative in the face of uncertainty. The question, therefore, is, was the COVID pandemic a good thing that happened to us? Or was it the worst thing ever that happened to humanity? Or should I say, COVID pandemic was simply a blessing in disguise? Well, I will unravel the answers to these questions through a very brief close reading of random lines and stanzas in some of the pandemic poems by Kenyan poets who share their experiences, thoughts, and feelings on how the COVID pandemic affected their lives. Let us have a read. The first poem is Stephen Kioma's COVID-19 poem. You like hiding your identity, then wear a mask. You claim that your hands are clean, then sanitize. For the death I cause is no man's fault, but rather my nature. You shall overcome me. It's in your blood. It's your nature. I am no professor, neither is this a lecture, but only working together can tame my destructive nature. This stanza shows that the poet is aggressively personifying COVID to be a voice that questions how hypocritical the human beings are. You like hiding your identity? Then wear a mask. It claims that human actions are the complete opposite of what humans say, hence a mockery of their character with what the reality is. The line, for the death I cause is no man's fault, suggests that despite the questionable character of human beings, no one is to blame, as it is an inevitable way of nature to bring beauty and destruction. This claims that COVID is nature's way. I honestly like the last two lines that the poet uses in the personification of COVID to sort of offer solution to the destruction it causes. I am no professor, neither is this a lecture, but only working together can tame my destructive nature. The solution is a call for unity, a call for all humanity to work as a team. As the common phrase notes, together we achieve more. Generally, the COVID pandemic in Kenya was a lesson for all Kenyans to come together no matter the unique differences in order to fight the virus. The second poem is Esther Wanjiru Kyungu's The Depths Are a Dungeon. The depths are a dungeon. The depths are a dungeon, drowning out the voice of laughter, stifling emotion, crushing hope. Wanjiru puts forth in her poem that all Kenyans became trapped into their homes with no escape but to stay at home for survival. The repetition of the line, "The depths are a dungeon," is an emphasis of the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. The entrapment levels of depression amongst many Kenyans, of course we all recall, our government directives on coronavirus, the presidential address on enhanced measures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the legal public health notices on COVID-19 restriction of movement of persons and related measures. Lest we forget, the state interventions to cushion Kenyans against the economic effects of COVID-19. All in all these are termed by the poet as the dungeon. Many, if not all Kenyans were in. The COVID pandemic took away the little things that used to amount to be a source of joy. But now, they are slowly becoming diminished. The pandemic suppressed every human sense of emotion and threw each and every one of us into a space of hopelessness about the present and the future. Hence the lines, drowning out the voice of laughter, stifling emotion, crushing hope. The third poem is COVID-19 and Our Humanity by Henry Indagasi. The choice we hear is stark. If you don't like wearing a mask, you will hate wearing a ventilator if you're lucky to get a bed in the ICU. The lines herein signify in all earnest how the pandemic quickly brought in a new way of life. The poet Indagasi purposely uses the second person pronoun you to convey the demanding nature of COVID. The poem paints COVID-19 as an unwelcomed guest who comes into someone's home, and instead of being like any typical visitor, it simply bosses people around and does whatever it feels like, making the owners feel devastated. This is actually what the poem is about. It continues on the other stanzas, highlighting various changes that COVID brought, from family members not being able to interact or visit each other, speaking of how we automatically became conscious not to visit our long-lived parents back in our villages or visit our newborn babies, as we might infect them with the coronavirus, a way of protecting their immunity from being tampered with. Just so sad, right? The lines, with its birthplace in China, this cruel but invisible enemy started blowing like a storm across the globe. A cyclone, a hurricane, a typhoon rolled into one. And here it is. It has come to Kenya, with Nairobi as the epicenter, and the city in the sun has been under lockdown. It's never us, they say, until it is us. Indagasi uses visual imagery to create a portrait of how cruel yet invisible the coronavirus was. The fusion of a simile like a storm and the metaphors cyclone, hurricane, typhoon all describe the appalling, horrifying nature of COVID pandemic upon the human beings, upon Kenyans. It is prudent to put forth that the poet powerfully yet passionately uses impeccable diction to gruel us into reflecting on how the pandemic forced us to appreciate the value of human connection in whatever facet of life we are connected. It also reminds us of how family-oriented we are. Yeah, be it you're a newly born baby, a young person, or an old person, we all need that test of human connection. The fourth poem is The Remnant by Mureithi Button. Button presents to us a persona who is a teenage girl in isolation or quarantine due to the effects of coronavirus. The lines, "My smile fades into thinness, casting shadows of fear around. Hot waves of sorrow beat, the little hope enshrined in my weakening mind." The lines posit a once joy-filled, hopeful girl dwindling in fear and disillusionment. But said to stay home kept me safe from a double tragedy and pangs of teenage delinquency glaring at me. A glad remnant I remain, to tell a story of a season that was to wipe me away. These lines are emotionally provoking us, to remind us of the many teenage girls who fell prey to sexual predators that take advantage of young girls. I like how the persona consoles herself, saying that despite the horrid coronavirus effect of being confined at home, she is somewhat grateful that being confined at home has shielded her from the teenage delinquency. By this, we recall the news report about the rise of teenage pregnancies linked to the COVID-19 lockdown. Do you remember all this news? The poem portrays COVID-19 pandemic as a reflection of the bitter reality that many young teenage girls faced at that time. So sad. The fifth poem is In Reset Button, Franklin Nyatemo. The bustling city stilled, the rushy Gikomba vanished. Nyatemo illustrates to us how our capital city, Nairobi, and its occupants therein had to adjust to the changes the pandemic brought. The poem's title, In Reset Button, signifies a dire need for all the Kenyans to quickly adapt to the new look of life in order to survive the trying economic times. The once busy city is now empty. The once noisy Gikomba market is no longer there. Every ounce of the economy was greatly affected during this time. Of course, the city and the market provided sustainability for family, but now all these are absent. Reset Button. Last but not least is the poem Hold On by Betty Nduko. Hold on, my dear, never let go. Amidst the fear, panic and isolation, and sometimes death, hold on. For every storm, calmness. I just like this last poem, and I've done it intentionally because it's more like a relief of hope, a relief of what we had gone through, of course, mentioning our experiences and our thoughts about how COVID pandemic affected us. But this poem of Hold On, it reminds us that there's a gasp of hope to humanity amidst the pandemic that people faced. And yes, we appreciate the fact that the pandemic made people more anxious, troubled, disquieted, and afraid. But with all these, the persona in the poem affirms us to be hopeful for new dawn, hopeful to see light at the end of this dark tunnel. And predictions of doom come to pass. And we, from cough to sneeze, and headache to suffocated stillness, only silently declaring our solitude. These lines challenge us into seeing beyond the complications and be bold to fight the coronavirus. As soon and very soon, the better bright days are yet to come. Oops, oh my goodness. I have just subconsciously echoed Sauti Soul's song, Brighter Days Are Yet to Come. Well, you can have a listen to that song. Such a lovely one. Anyways, here we are, post-COVID. In reflection, we have soldiered on with life. Thank God. By the way, just a quick one. For your further learning, go and read Timothy Wagusa's pandemic poem titled The Side Benefits of Corona. Wow. This will enable you to see the pros of the pandemic, how it brought sighs of relief in families, not to mention the rekindled marriage as a wife rejoices over her husband coming back, the joys of baby boom as families celebrate newborn babies, the refurbished self-identity in relationships, and of course, many more. All these were the side benefits. Now give me your answer, my dear literature lovers. Was the COVID pandemic a good thing that happened to us? Or was it the worst thing that ever happened to humanity? Or should I still say COVID pandemic was simply a blessing in disguise? That's the end of the series, and that's all I have for you today. Kindly subscribe and share this podcast with your family and friends. See you when you see me. Bye.